gotten quite a bit warmer, hasn't it? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, we're on page 287. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 18th day of January 2021, SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're in chapter 6 entitled Dhyana Yoga, at text 34, top of page 287. Chanchalam Himanak Krishna Chanchalam Himanak Krishna Pramati Balavad Dridham Pramati Balavad Dridham Tasyaham Nigraham Manye Tasyaham Nigraham Manye Vayor Ivasuduskaram Vayo Ivasuduskaram Chanchalam Himanak Krishna Pramati Balavadvidham Tasyaham Nigraham Manye Vayo Ivasuduskaram Chanchalam Himanak Krishna Pramati Balavadvidham Tasyaham Nigraham Manye Vayo Ivasuduskaram Chanchalam Himanak Krishna Pramati Balavadvidham Tasyaham Nigraham Manye Vayo Ivasuduskaram Chanchalam Himanak Krishna Pramati Balavadvidham tasyaham vigvaham manye vayo iva sudushkaram chanchalam himana Krishna pamati balavadvidham tasyaham vigvaham manye vayo iva sudushkaram. Chanchalam, flickering, he certainly, manaha, mind, Krishna, O Krishna, pramati, agitating, balavat, strong, vidham, obstinate, tasya, its, aham, I, nigvaham, subduing, manye, think, vayo, of the wind, iva, like, sudushkaram, difficult. Translation. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Purport. The mind is so strong and obstinate that it sometimes overcomes the intelligence, although the mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence. For a man in the practical world who has to fight so many opposing elements, it is certainly very difficult to control the mind. Artificially, one may establish a mental equilibrium toward both friend and enemy, but ultimately no worldly man can do so, for this is more difficult than controlling the raging wind. In the Vedic literature, the Katha Upanishad 1:3-4, it is said, also you say, Atmanam ratinam vidhi, shadirang ratamevacha, buddhim tu sarathim vidhi, manak pragrahamevacha, indriyani hayanahu, Vishayangs teshu gocharan Atmendriya mano yuktam Bhukte tahu manishinaha. The individual is the passenger in the car of the material body, and intelligence is the driver. Mind is the driving instrument, and the senses are the horses. The self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in the association of the mind and senses. So it is understood by great thinkers. Close quote. Intelligence is supposed to direct the mind, but the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes even one's own intelligence, as an acute infection may surpass the efficacy of medicine. Such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. And what can we say of modern man? The simile used here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind. And it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra for deliverance, in all humility. The method prescribed is Savaimana Krishna Badara Vindayo. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna. Only then will there remain no other engagements to agitate the mind. Can you turn this up a bit? It's almost down to 0. Thank you, bro. Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Thank you, that's better. So, we have been hearing from Krishna about this Ashtanga Yoga system. He's given the basic principle that one has to control the senses and the mind, and this is one method of doing so. And he gives some very practical instructions, as you may remember, where to sit, where to set up your yoga camp, and how to sit, and what to meditate on, matparaha, on me, ultimately. And after describing that, and of course one has to keep the eyes half open and seeing the tip of the nose. I can never understand how you could do that without going cross-eyed. I don't know. Have you ever tried it? Even for a few minutes. But there it is, tip of the nose, and also to keep the gaze between the two eyebrows. How are you supposed to do that at the same time? I don't know. It's a very difficult system, but then in verses 23 to 25, 20 to 23, Krishna describes the wonderful benefits to be gleaned. Yato paramate chittam durudham yoga sevya. When one attains samadhi, then he is experiencing the highest happiness. He thinks there's no greater gain. Even in the greatest disturbance, one remains undisturbed. It's a very attractive goal to go for. But after all of that, and Krishna is encouraging Arjuna, as we saw in the last verse, 33, he thinks it's impossible for him. O Madhusudan, the system of yoga you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. So Arjuna is externally a Kshatriya, and he has to, you can imagine, on the battlefield, it's just the antithesis practically to this. Yoga, immediately go alone. That's the first thing. Go alone, find a sacred place, sit quietly. So Arjuna says, how can I do this? And then he gives this wonderful simile, Prabhupada says, or analogy, of the raging wind. When the mind has, I like to say, my tired joke, mind has a mind of its own. When it gets going, if you're in the mode of passion, what to speak of ignorance, then the mind is in complete control. And that means that the senses are also in control. Well, the senses control the mind control the intelligence. The lower self is controlling the higher self. So the whole yoga system is to systematically get hold of that mind. We read those verses when you were up in SanDiego. Udharet atmanatmanam, natmanam avasaryet. Atmano bandhu, atmaiva ripuratmanaha. One should elevate himself by his mind, not degrade himself. The mind is the worst enemy of the conditioned soul, or his best friend, if it's brought under control. That mind which is brought under control can be the best friend, but the mind is out of control, it's the worst enemy. Now, in this purport, we read this nice analogy from the Katha Upanishad, and many of you may remember there's a nice painting of this. There's the soul is panic-stricken because he's in the chariot. It's going down the mountain, dangerous mountain road, right? And he's trying to hold on to those senses, 5 horses, with the reins, which are the mind. And the soul is actually the passenger, and the intelligence is trying to control. But the senses are in control. I mean, they're out of control. And so you're on a very dangerous path. And that's basically what conditioned life is all about, more or less. Now, less means if you're in the mode of goodness, then you've got some measure of control, and you're not being whipped around by the senses and the mind as much. But even in the mode of goodness, it's not pure goodness, and so that can also be overwhelmed by the lower modes, as explained graphically in the 14th chapter. So overall, Arjuna is not very optimistic that he can follow this process that Krishna has given him. And this analogy, this always reminds me, this chariot of the body. You got the body chariot, then you got the senses, and you got the mind, intelligence, the soul. Of the 3rd chapter, the end of the 3rd chapter, where we find that Arjuna asks, it's practically a parallel here, what is it that forces one to act against one's best interests, even if you know something's wrong or bad for you, still you do it? Well, that's lust. That's material desire that has taken over the mind, intelligence, and senses to one degree or another. And those who are completely conditioned souls, they have no practice of yoga. They're helpless, practically. They're just being pulled around by their senses, the mind, and the objects of the senses, and the emotions. They have no idea what to do. And so that's the state of the ordinary person. So if we have faith that there is another way of life, that there is a higher state of being, or we just want to try to attain some peace, and we're fortunate enough to come in touch with Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, then before long, as we'll see in a few verses at the end of the chapter, the greatest yogi is one who is always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. And all these benefits we read in text 20 to 23 of being experiencing the self, the super self, and one's own self, through transcendental senses, and being able to tolerate even the most difficulty without losing one's composure. In other words, having equipoise. That's mentioned so much in the Bhagavad Gita. That's feasible through bhakti yoga. In this age, especially by the chanting of the holy name, that's the means of controlling the mind, taking over, and purifying the senses, purifying the whole being, and especially coming in touch with Krishna. And that the highest levels of bhakti yoga are synonymous with so many of the aspects of samadhi, the full absorption, the special spiritual energy that comes. We read about the great Goswamis who only slept an hour and a half, if that. They hardly ate anything at all, and lived such austere lives, and yet they were in the highest state of ecstasy. What is that? The gopi bhava samrata abdul hari kalola magno muhur. So the idea is that I heard this on a tape every time I listen to these lectures of Srila Prabhupada. There's something that is pertinent to the class. And he's describing there how Krishna is so kind that he makes the yoga process extremely easy in this age, coming as Lord Chaitanya and giving us this wonderful mantra and the process of chanting and the whole philosophy underlying it, which is important, the foundation of a faith to keep doing it. And so we have to be intelligent and take advantage of the opportunity. We only have so many, seconds, minutes, hours, days, months left in this body. And you don't know what may happen. Even though we may be young, the situation may change. I mean, the climate and the social situation is like, who knows what's going to happen. So we want to, as quickly as possible, take shelter of Krishna as fully as possible and not hold anything back. So this analogy is very, I like to point out, when I was living in Miami, you sometimes could directly experience the incredible power of the wind. Here also we have, these Santa Anas come and they're blowing the fire, it's impossible to stop it. It's extremely powerful. And if the mind takes over and controls the soul, takes control of the higher self, then you're living with your worst enemy. So an intelligent person learns how to subdue the mind and make it his best friend. Just like I like to think, the gopis are always the ideal, And sometimes in their high ecstasy of separation from Krishna, what is that verse? You know this one. I'm just kidding. Now I forget if it's quoted in the books or not, but it's from the Krishna Karnamrita. So what are they saying there? They're separated from Krishna, and they're feeling this incredible emotion of love and anxiety to meet him and everything. And so at this point there's a certain ecstasy where they're saying, well, let's forget him already. It's like Radharani and the bee. Have you ever? I don't know if you've ever read through the Sanskrit and studied each. But there's a certain point where she says, "We wish we could stop, thinking of him, but it's impossible, And it's such a painful thing, the separation, and yet we can't stop thinking. We can't stop talking about him. So that's what this verse is about. One friend is speaking to another. Krishna, whatever we have tried to do to meet Krishna, let it be finished now. My dear friend, say something auspicious, but whatever you do, don't speak about Krishna. But this, but alas, he's within my heart. That sweet, smiling face, a festival for the mind and the heart. Kripana Krishna, that this wretched desire to meet Krishna is growing at every moment. So this is, of course, a very high emotion. But this is where the mind can't help but thinking of Krishna. That's what we want. Where when you're just kind of just thinking of nothing, immediately Krishna comes into the mind. Or rather, you've trained the mind so much that you see everything as an expansion of Krishna. That's right in the 11th canto. This is there's the first lesson of the 9 Yogendras. I always forget that. I think it's Kavi Yogendra. There's each have different name. And he's giving the first lesson, and there's 4 or 5 often quoted verses in this series. There's about 8 or 9 verses in there. And after the question is, what's the ultimate good? How can one attain the ultimate good? And he answers in terms of how you can overcome any fear in this world. It's interesting. And because fear is a sign of your being, in the bodily concept of life, sort of being in the lower concept of life. Fearlessness is a very prominent symptom of the great devotees. Prahlad Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, because they know they're not the body. So in the course of describing it, this is where he describes the source of fear is turning away from Krishna. Bhayam dutiya banavesha daksya ishara petasya viparyo osmati. Fear is caused by forgetting our connection to Krishna, forgetting our protection by Krishna, because trying to be independent and enjoy. The ishara petasya, turning away from the Isha, from the Lord, and forgetting everything, forgetting our position, and everything becoming reversed. This is caused by Maya. As soon as we lose the shelter of Krishna, Maya is right there to drag us down. So the intelligent person, Buddha, he reverses the process. He trains the mind and the senses to turn back toward Krishna, and he worships the spiritual master as on the level of God, and seen as very self. That's a very important point. So that's near the beginning, and then he goes on, and then they said, well, how do you turn the mind toward Krishna? There's 2 verses about the chanting of the holy name. One should spend his life traveling everywhere, not caring about outsiders, chanting the holy name. There's a verse in there that Lord Chaitanya chanted when he cited when he was speaking to Prakashananda Saraswati. You remember he said, and I think it's understood that this really, he was just saying this sort of as the argument. My spiritual master told me that I wasn't worthy to study Vedanta Sutra. I mean, Lord Chaitanya, Vedanta, he's Nimai Pandit. If anyone's worthy, but so you should just chant Hare Krishna, chant the holy name. So he said, I did that, and I started, feeling all these symptoms. I didn't know what was going on. I went back, and my spiritual master, he congratulated me like that. So then he taught him a verse that he said is the essence of the whole Bhagavatam. He says, Evam vadaksva priyanama kirtya jatanuraga dutichitta urchai hasatchitoro titirautigaya junmanavam hutatiloka bhaya. So one who has taken a vow to chant the holy name, vadaksva priyanama kirtya, which is the holy name which is very dear to one, name of Krishna. Jatanuraga, it generates anurag, love for Krishna, attraction of it. Dhutachitta uchai, the heart melts in love, and one chants very loudly and cries and dances and things, not caring about outsiders. So what I'm getting at is that the subsequent verses describe how one sees the whole world, everything in the world, as a manifestation of Krishna. In other words, can you imagine where, because we're sitting here in the temple, and it's designed in such a way that everything reminds us of Krishna. There's the wonderful deities, and the paintings, and the devotees, and the prasadam, and the sounds, and the fragrances, the incense, whatever. That's the whole idea. But then you go outside, and there's so many things that can distract you from Krishna. But imagine if you had the purity of vision, where everything you saw reminded you of Krishna. That's what the whole 7th chapter is about. Rasoham apsakonteya, taste of water, I am the taste of water, light of the sun and the moon, the fragrance of the earth. All the senses are covered. If you can remember those verses, and you're open to it, then everything will remind you of Krishna. So that's and you're not sitting down, you're doing your duties, you're going out and working, but you're always thinking of Krishna. You're in samadhi, even while working. So that's practical yoga for us in this age. And Krishna will, encourage Arjuna. He gets a little discouraged. What if I fail? Well, you'll take birth in yogi family. But in the final, at the end, he says, don't worry. Yoginam api sarvesham. one who is always thinking of me, and Arjuna is certainly always thinking of Krishna, is the best of yogis. And then in the next verse, or the next chapter, begins with this, notice this is the last of the first 6. The middle 6 are the essence of the Gita, Prabhupada said. The first chapter of that middle 6, chapter 7, Maya Sakta Manaparta. Now I'm going to show you how you can have your mind, don't forget the mind is the key here, can be the enemy. You can train your mind to be naturally attracted to me. Asakta Manaparta. And that's where, Bhakti Yoga is more, in great detail, has been explained. Will be explained. Alright, any discussion on this text 34? Very famous verse. We can sometimes feel that. The mind is very powerful like the wind. Okay, so Krishna answers, text 35. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodo Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kunteya Vairagyena Chagrihyate. Lord Shri Krishna said, O mighty An, son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Purport. The difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind, as expressed by Arjuna, is accepted by the personality of Godhead. But at the same time, he suggests that by practice and detachment it is possible. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe the strict rules and regulations of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the supersoul, restraining the senses and mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. The first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn Vairagya. Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind in spirit. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. This is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit. This attachment is called Pareshanubhuti, spiritual satisfaction. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. The more one eats while hungry, the more one feels satisfaction and strength. Similarly, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. Hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind, and eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. So I can't resist. This is another verse from that series I just mentioned, the first in the series of the 9 Yogendras. Bhakti, Prabhupada would always quote the first line and the first word of this of the second line of this verse. Bhakti pareshanu bhavo virakti anyat chaisha trika eka kala pabudyamanasi yatashantaksyu tushti pushti charapayo nugasam. Does that sound familiar at all? So this is exactly what Prabhupada is describing here, though he doesn't quote the Sanskrit. And that is that one who is fully surrendered to the Lord, he has these experiences come practically simultaneously, the ones he describes in this verse. The first is bhakti, which here means the pleasure. Yes, the pleasure of connecting with Krishna, of Krishna consciousness, of bhakti yoga, the transcendental rasa and pleasure. And then Paraisha Anubhava means the direct experience of Krishna, seeing him, feeling his presence in your heart, and so forth. And then Virakti Anyatacha means detachment from everything else. So you have the bhakti rasa, and then you have Krishna's experience appearing before you or making himself known in various ways, and detachment from everything else. So bhakti anuravarakti, trika eka kala, they come practically simultaneously for one who is advanced in devotional service. 4, one who is surrendered. Prabodhyamanasa, and then he gives an analogy. Ashnatak, one who is eating. Imagine, I always give the analogy of Nrsingadev's appearance feast, which is in the evening, late evening, actually. And so it's a whole day's fast, so you get pretty good at appetite, And there's a nice feast prepared, Krishna Prasadam. So you're sitting down, and then finally comes time after the appropriate prayers of honoring the prasad. So what's the experiences? First is the pleasure of tasting all the wonderful preps, tushti. That's the tushti. Pushti is the nourishment for the body. It's compared to the direct experience of Krishna's presence. You see? And as you eat, you also become detached. In other words, you're filling your hunger. Your hunger is going. That hunger is compared to desire for various sense gratification. You don't have it. You're completely satisfied. You're pleased. You're satisfied, and you're nourished. So similarly, the soul is pleased and satisfied by perceiving Krishna directly, and nourished, and you become full of vairagya, simultaneously. So that's possible. Now he's encouraging Arjuna through practice and detachment, but so he's not giving up on it, And after a couple of verses, Arjuna will again express pessimism. But there's some very good instruction here that by practicing bhakti yoga, one can attain control over the mind and detachment, and those are essential for further advancement. Okay, any questions on this point? Abhyas, that's practice, vairagya. Okay, asangyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me matihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayatah. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement can hardly achieve success in self-realization. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Such a show of yoga may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. A Krishna conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without separate endeavor. But a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna conscious. So, was it this last purport where we read? Yes. Hearing about Krishna is the best process for controlling the mind, right? Yes. So hearing about, where we talked about the pastimes or the activities of Krishna. So that reminds me of a verse that I recently was reminded about, which is very cogent. And then I want to share with you just a little taste of one of Rupa Goswami's contributions to give us the means of fixing the mind on the pastimes of Krishna. So, I think you may have heard this before, but there's a chapter in the 12th canto, which you may not have read yet, all about the different kinds of annihilations. Kind of very sobering, the partial annihilation of the universe when Brahma goes to sleep, and then a full annihilation when he dies, and our own little annihilations when we die. That's called an annihilation too. So it's a very sobering chapter, And then at the end, there's a verse describing the remedy for those who are suffering in samsara, burning in this forest fire, who are in the ocean of samsara and suffering the the many miseries of the fire of samsara. Both analogies are there. So he says, Sangsara sindhum ati dustaram utti teshor nanyak pravo bhagavatak purushottamasya lila kata rasani sevanam antarena pungso bhaved vivadadukka dabadidasya. So he begins with the Sangsara Sindhu, the ocean of samsara. Very, you can imagine just being thrown in the middle of an ocean, flailing away, trying to survive. Very painful and very, full of anxiety, and it's horrible. So that's what we're in. Although sometimes we have the illusion of some pleasure or something that mitigates it, but then we're back into it. So ati dushtaram, very difficult to cross beyond. But still, if one is, for those who are serious about doing that, utti tishur, eager to cross beyond it, there's no other boat. We need a boat. We're in the samsara sindhu, the ocean of samsara. So nanyak plavat, there's no other boat than what he's just going to describe now. Bhagavatat purushosamascha lila kataras anishevanam. Cultivating the taste for the pastimes, lila kata, for hearing the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then at the last line, again, he reiterates what, the suffering, but this time he uses the fire analogy. Pungso bhavet, for the human being who is vivada dukkha dabaditasya, suffering in the forest fire of varied miseries of this material world. So the beginning is the ocean of samsara, the end is the forest fire. So here's the gifts of the Goswamis. You remember in that Goswami song, there's one of my favorite lines in there. It says, how's it go now? It's the verse that starts out, Shri Gauranga Gunana Varnana Vado Shuddhasa Midjan Vito Papo Tapa Nakuntano Tanubatam Govinda Gana Amritai. So Papo Tapa are the miseries that come from sin. Those who are suffering the miseries due to being sinful. Papa Utapa. Utapa means very hot, heat, suffering from papa, sin. The Quintano, they cut off, they destroy all of those sufferings. How? By pouring down songs about Govinda. Govinda Gana Amritai, see? Which you can drink, and it's an elixir that relieves that suffering. And so, here's just one part of one song, one work, where Rupa Goswami gives us the opportunity to become absorbed in Krishna's pastimes in the most delightful way. He has a book called Leela Chanda. In Krishna Krada's translation, he didn't know about that Leela Chanda name, and so he called it an alternate name, Ashtadasha Chanda, verses 18. But those 18 verses, sometimes they have 30, 40 lines to them, so they're substantial. So here's just a little bit that I memorized, and you can see how delightful it is. There's rhyme, and it has beautiful meter, and it's just summarizing Krishna's baby pastimes. Altanaka mahasankulitam bakashakadaras shayanalambaka kuchadasa trishna vidichatarodhana chanchatapatakata shakadavinodhana. Now I wish I had put this in a poem. I'm hoping to do that before I leave this body. So what he's describing is the Utana ceremony. This is like the second one, right? He kills Putana, and the next thing that happens is the Utana ceremony. He grows up a little bit. I think after a few, you know what Utana means? Turning over on your stomach and crawling. Mostly the babies, when they're just born, they can just lie on the back, right? But then when they grow a little bit, that's an occasion for a festival in Vedic culture. It's only for mothers. It's not even for, only for the older ladies. No men are involved. So Mother Yashoda is inviting all these people. So Krishna, she places on this little cradle beneath the cart, and he's wants to suck her breast, Altanaka mahasankulitambaka shakadarastana shayanalam kucharasa trishna. The thirst for the breast, for the milk of the breast. Kucharasa trishna vidichatarodhana. He started crying. She was absorbed in greeting the guests. Chanchala patakata shakadabanodhana. So here we had Chanchala again. We had the Chanchala, the back and forth. He's swinging his legs, and he hits the cart with his little feet, but knocks the whole thing down. There's a demon hiding in the cart, So Chanchala patakata shakadabana vismita pasabashatugam. So all the elders came and said, this is amazing. How did this happen? And the little boys, who were assigned to play with Krishna and watch him. It's mentioned like that in the Krishna book. they said, yeah, Krishna moved his feet and knocked the whole cart down. They didn't believe him. Yeah, right. Come on, the little baby's going to knock this big cart down. So Vismita Pashabasa Durma Katinanijaya hit the Shavaka base to the Shavaka, the other little children. And then Shavaka I'm forgetting these verses. Chanchadaban Shakadavan Vismita Pashabasa Durga Machech the Katinanijaya hit the Shavaka Kata the Janaki Janaka Katantaka. So greatly in anxiety, the mother and father, Nanda and Yashoda, came running. What happened? And they saw Krishna was unharmed somehow by some miracle, and all the cart, everything was there. And so they got some Brahmins to come and chant some mantras for protection. There's a wonderful painting where Mother Yashoda is bathing Krishna, and the Brahmins are all chanting. This is all for his protection, So all of that, of course, the details aren't all there. But if you're familiar with the pastime and you chant these verses, all the details come back. So the whole idea is it's a way of remembering the pastimes, with like this. So this is what we have. We have, of course, the Bhagavad Gita. We have all these books, but we also have these wonderful aesthetic expressions of Krishna's pastimes that we can become absorbed in, and in this way become attracted to Krishna and become cured of desire for sense gratification. So that's what and that's the only boat. That's the boat that we got to get on. Now, of course, chanting the holy name, everything's included. If you realize the end of the name, it's a progression. The name, form, qualities, pastimes. They all come just from chanting the name if you really chant purely. So all of it is revealed, ultimately. So what I'm saying is that this is our yoga. This is our means of controlling the mind. And not just controlling it, and fixing it on it, but actually reveling in it. And it's completely natural. You're on Harinam, if you really get into chanting and everything, nothing can distract you. I like to give the example. We used to go down. I don't know. You were on? Yeah, you were here. We had this New Year's Eve kirtan. Biggest kirtan. People come by the thousands who don't come the rest of the year, and so the sidewalks are all filled and people. And so as soon as we stop, people are always looking for this. And some people come down there. They really don't have any money. They can't go. They just want to hang out. So if there's something going on in the street, then they gather, So it became. So I remember one year, the story, and this, there's a whole party atmosphere going on there. So there's a bunch of ladies on the corner. You have to stop, and they were hardly dressed. I'm not even going to say scantily dressed, and so we're just chanting away, and I was thinking, how unfortunate they were. I wasn't thinking, oh my God, I can control my mind. It's Hare Krishna, But it's like, that's designed. The whole thing is designed to attract your mind, to attract your mind, get involved, in all of the different bars and restaurants and everything. There's no attraction. There's nothing. We're just trying to give them the holy name, and celebrate. So that you can feel the protection if you get absorbed in Lord Chaitanya's protection, Lord Nityananda's protection from engaging in Sankirtan, and it's all due to this power of the holy name, which we know is non-different from Krishna. All right, for extra credit, who knows that verse? Namachintamani Krishnas. Okay, this one we have to know. A lot of important information. Namachintamani Krishnas, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto Abhinatvam Nama Namino. Now, do you know what Abhinna means? You know that phrase, Achincha Beta Beta Tattva. So the word Beta means different. Abheda means not different. Simultaneously, inconceivably simultaneously, one and different. Actually, the different comes first in the Sanskrit. So that Beta is a different form of Binna, is the same idea. So Abhinatvam Nama Namino. The holy name has the quality. This suffix tva means having the quality. Just like we sing every morning, Sakshad Harit Vrina. He has the quality of Hari, and should be worshipped on the level of Hari, the spiritual master. Not that he is Hari directly. You understand? So the Abhinatvam, it has the quality of being one with, identical with Krishna himself, and because of that, it's Namachintamani. It's like a Chintamani gem which transforms whatever it comes in touch with. So you come in touch with the holy name and it transforms your consciousness. It's active, it's alive, you know. He is alive. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, the very form of mellows of rasa you can experience through, you know, just chanting the holy name. Which are, you know, Chaitanya means in this context consciousness, spirit. Purna, it is complete, a complete form of yoga. It's not that you're missing out on anything, you know. Shuddho, completely pure. Nitya mukto, eternally liberated, not tinged at all by matter. And all of this is true because it's Krishna himself. You know, the holy name is Krishna himself. So that's why when we chant with a little attention and a little devotion, we can feel the potency. And it has this profound effect on us. Okay. Tapas. Haribol. Dandavat Pranams.
Haribol Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams.
Any questions from our guests?
We don't have any questions from guests, except they are telling Hare Krishna.
Okay.
We have 12 people watching you right now in YouTube.
All right. Okay. So let's go on. We have a little more time. Text 36. Asankshayatmana yogo dushpapa iti me matihi pashyatmanat. Oh, we did this one, didn't we? Sorry. Arjuna Vacha. Arjuna Vacha. Ayati Shaddayo Peto Yogat Chalittamanasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? Purport. The path of self-realization or mysticism is described in the Bhagavad Gita. The basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living entity is not this material body, but that he is different from it and that his happiness is in eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. These are transcendental beyond both body and mind. Self-realization is sought by the path of knowledge, by the practice of the Eightfold System, or by Bhakti Yoga. In each of these processes, one has to realize the constitutional position of the living entity, his relationship with God, and the activities whereby he can re-establish the lost link and achieve the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. Following any of the above-mentioned three methods, one is sure to reach the supreme goal sooner or later. This was asserted by the Lord in the 2nd chapter. Even a little endeavor on the transcendental path offers a great hope for deliverance. Out of these three methods, the path of Bhakti Yoga is especially suitable for this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. To be doubly assured, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna to confirm his former statement. One may sincerely accept the path of self-realization, but the process of cultivation of knowledge and the practice of the Eightfold Yoga system are generally very difficult for this age. Therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail for many reasons. First of all, one may not be sufficiently serious about following the process. To pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on the illusory energy. Consequently, whenever a person tries to escape the clutches of the illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. A conditioned soul is already allured by the modes of material nature, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental disciplines. This is called Yogat Chalita Manasa, deviation from the transcendental path. Arjuna is inquisitive to know the results of deviation from the path of self-realization. So this is, first of all, there's two things that we need to take from this. One is that on the encouraging side, nothing is ever lost. We learned that in the 2nd chapter. Neha Brahmanashosti Pratyavayo navidyate Swapamapya siddhamasya trayate mahato bayat. So Krishna says, in this practice, Krishna consciousness, there's no loss or diminution. Even a little advancement on this path will protect one from the most fearful kind of danger, which is What is it? Yeah, losing the human form of life. That's defeat. I mean, you never die. You can back up again, but it just time, who knows how many years. So, but if you make a little advancement on Krishna consciousness, you'll get a human birth to continue the process. But then the question arises, okay, that's great. I mean, that's encouraging. But why prolong the agony, as we say? And it is agony. We read the Bhagavad Gita, and you don't need to read anything. You can just look at the the world as it is. It's such a dangerous place, and you can lose your life at any time, and then postpone. Start over again. So that's an encouragement. But then there's also this this idea that we should try to get out. That we should try to complete. Prabhupada encourages us to complete the process in this very lifetime. So there's on one side there's encouragement, to strive as hard as possible. On the other kind of says, okay, don't become in great anxiety, because you're on the path. Go as far as you can and be serious. Try to go back to God, but if you don't, you can pick up where you left off. It's certainly not true of anything material. All aspirations for material happiness and wealth and fame and power, whatever else you may get, education, the four main opulences, Jan Maishaya Shuddha Shibir, good birth, wealth, education, high education and beauty, they're just self-defeating. If you get too much involved in those things, you can't chant. That's Queen Kunti's wonderful prayer. Janmaishaya Shuddha Shibir Edamanamadak Pamanabahachibadatan Vaitrama Kinchana Gochara. My dear Lord, you are easily approached, but not by those who are too much intoxicated, progressively intoxicated by these four opulences, trying to achieve them and try to enjoy them. Because one who is absorbed in that way cannot chant your name with deep feeling. That's the meaning of the verse, which has been kind of hidden for 50 years because of a misediting. But that's what it's all about. It comes out in the purport in spades. Anyone could chant the holy name, but there is a quality of that chanting. That's practically a direct quote. Now that's one of the reasons why, when you think about it, this age is so favorable, is that the demigods are hoping to take birth in this Kali Yuga, because Lord Chaitanya came. And in this age, he's made it very easy to attain the highest levels, beyond what the demigods are dreaming of. They may enjoy godly delights for many years, but they know that they eventually have to come back down here. So, Kaling Sabaji Yantyaya Guna Gyasara Bhaganha Yatra Sankirtanenaiva Sarva Svarto Bilabhyate. That those who really know the value of things, they worship this Kali Yuga. The Aryans, because in this age, just by Sankirtan, congregational chanting of the holy name of Krishna, all of one's svartas, the actual goal of the soul, can be fulfilled. So it's the old thing, the last will be first, the first will be last. Because we're so beaten down and unqualified in this age, don't live very long, we're disturbed, and we're misguided and unlucky, and always. So it's not, in that way it's disqualified. But therefore, when we learn about the process of Krishna consciousness, heading by the holy name, we can take it up and we can pray with all earnestness, because we have no other hope. That's why Chinada Bisuni Chena, to really feel oneself helpless without Krishna's guidance. If you're going to live 10,000 years, you have this powerful body, more powerful than 10,000 elements, and you can travel in the airways. You don't feel the urgency. You don't feel like humble as a blade of grass. But it's easy for us if we just, look around. So that's an advantage, is that you can chant with deep feeling if you get the right association and you surrender. So that's a great advantage of Kali Yuga, and we need all the advantages we can get. So Arjun is asking a question that's very pertinent for us also. I've been around in this movement almost 50 years, and I've seen many devotees come and many devotees go. Now I know, and they know, should know that nothing is lost, but it's sad to see. And Prabhupada was very disturbed when devotees leaving. That's why he started the systematic classes and everything, because that gives a foundation for your faith, and You can be chanting, but if you don't develop some philosophy, you can be spirited away, because this Kali Yuga is so crazy. Nothing is lost, but everything's postponed. So we don't want to become Chalita Manasa, and so we stay strict in our sadhana. Okay, it's getting a little late, and but I like to end with some little poem. Haven't heard this one in a while. Oh, here's one. Smita ducha makadanda sindi bhaktada vindam tavapada hansan vishtagandham mukunda vidicita pashupadi neta sarangarangam mamadidiyata dage sangamangi karotu. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. Your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus which does ere their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste a most exquisite pleasure in that lotus of your face. O my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. The prayer to always remember the face of Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. We'll resume in text 38 tomorrow.